Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Imagine waking up one day, looking in the mirror and realizing that the person looking back at you is changing. For years, your youth, your energy, and your looks were your superpower. They were how you got noticed, how you felt valued, and how you moved through the world. But now, the first wrinkles are showing up. The silver hairs are creeping in, and suddenly you start to feel something terrifying. You are becoming invisible. How do you cope when the world around you only values youth, but time keeps moving forward? How do you deal with the pressure to fix it, to hide it, or to fight a battle against the clock that you know you can't win? In this video, we are going to walk through 10 powerful chapters of a life caught between holding on to the past and finding the courage to step into the future. And along the way, we'll look at real-life problems, the social pressures we all face, and we'll practice some incredible English vocabulary and expressions to help you talk about deep, meaningful life experiences. If you've ever worried about growing older or felt the pressure to stay perfect, this story is for you. Let's get right into Chapter 1.
Clara had always known how to turn heads. For as long as she could remember, her youthful looks were her quiet superpower. Walking into a room, she could effortlessly command attention without saying a single word. Society had taught her that beauty was her greatest asset, and she had spent years carefully maintaining it. But on a crisp Tuesday morning, right before a major presentation at work, the illusion shattered. Clara was leaning close to the bathroom mirror, applying her usual touch of lipstick, when the harsh overhead lighting caught something unfamiliar. She froze. There, right at her hairline, was a coarse, unmistakable strand of silver. It seemed to stick out like a sore thumb. Heart pounding, she leaned in closer. As she examined her face, she noticed faint web-like lines tracing the corners of her eyes. They weren't just temporary laugh lines anymore. They had permanently taken root. A cold wave of anxiety washed over her. In a world that constantly worships youth, these tiny changes felt like a betrayal. It wasn't just about hair or skin. It was the terrifying realization that time was marching forward and she couldn't slow it down. She desperately tried to brush it off and focus on her upcoming meeting, but the seed of doubt had been planted. For the first time in her life, Clara looked in the mirror and didn't see her usual confidence. Instead, she saw the first undeniable signs of a ticking clock, and she had no idea how to stop it. Within a few short months, the subtle changes on the outside began to alter Clara's world on the inside. It started with small, almost imperceptible shifts in her daily routine. At her favorite local coffee shop, the barista who used to chat and offer a warm smile now rushed through her order without looking up. When walking through the heavy glass doors of her office building, people no longer paused to hold them open for her. She was starting to blend into the background, becoming a background character in a city she used to own. The true shock, however, came during the weekly marketing strategy meeting. Clara leaned forward, cleared her throat, and pitched a well-researched idea she had spent days perfecting. Her manager completely bypassed her comment, looking right past her as if she hadn't spoken at all. Just moments later, a younger colleague repeated the exact same point, and the room erupted in enthusiastic agreement. Clara sat back in her chair, feeling a sudden, chilling sensation wash over her. It felt as though she was wearing an invisible cloak, hidden away by a society that simply stops looking when youth fades. She realized that losing her youthful appearance meant losing her social currency. Without her striking looks to pave the way, her voice, her experience, and her brilliance were suddenly being pushed to the margins.
The attention she had taken for granted her entire life was evaporating, leaving her alone with a quiet, growing panic.
Panic quickly transformed into action, and Clara decided she would not go down without a fight. She began spending hours online, desperately searching for anything that promised to erase the hands of time. Her vanity table, once simple and elegant, became cluttered with expensive jars, overnight serums, and miracle creams. Every morning and evening became a strict, exhausting ritual as she meticulously layered product after product onto her skin. When the topical creams failed to deliver the instant results she craved, she decided to raise the stakes. She booked her first appointment at a high-end medical spa, her heart racing as she sat in the pristine clinical waiting room. The dermatologist pointed out flaws Clara hadn't even noticed yet, casually suggesting a long list of fillers and paralyzing injections. Clara nodded eagerly, willing to pay any price and endure any amount of pain to buy back her confidence. Over the next few weeks, her bank account drained rapidly as she chased the elusive fountain of youth. She went to extreme lengths, enduring painful chemical peels that left her skin raw and following restrictive, joyless diets. Every social invitation was viewed through a lens of anxiety as she worried about harsh lighting or cameras capturing her true age. Yet despite the thousands of dollars spent, the mirror remained a harsh and unforgiving critic. She was running a relentless marathon against her own biology, and deep down, she knew she was losing ground. The youthful glow she desperately tried to mimic felt less like a natural beauty and more like a fragile, expensive mask she was trapped inside. On a rainy Sunday afternoon, Clara found herself trapped inside with nothing but her own thoughts. Seeking a distraction, she decided to tackle the messy storage closet at the end of her hallway. Deep in the back, behind old coats and forgotten luggage, she pulled out a dusty cardboard box labeled Memories. As she opened it, the distinct scent of old paper and dried lavender filled the quiet room. Right on top lay a stack of glossy photographs from her mid-20s, laughing with friends on a sunlit beach. She stared at the girl in the pictures, the smooth skin, the vibrant, unburdened smile, and the effortless confidence radiating from her eyes. Beneath the photos, she discovered a bundle of old love letters and handwritten notes from past admirers. They spoke of her captivating presence, her breathtaking beauty, and how she could light up any room she walked into. Reading the words felt like reading about a completely different person, a ghost from a lifetime that had slipped away. A heavy, suffocating wave of grief settled over her chest as she compared those vibrant images to her current reflection. She realized she had built her entire identity on a foundation that was never meant to last. The adoration of her youth had been a comforting safety net, but now that it was gone, she felt entirely exposed. Sitting on the floor, surrounded by the ghosts of her past, Clara wept for the girl she used to be. She was forced to confront a terrifying question. If she was no longer that beautiful young woman, who exactly was she? The heavy weight of the past followed Clara right back into the office the following Monday morning. Any hope of finding her footing was instantly shattered when her director introduced a new team member. Her name was Chloe, a 23-year-old graduate who practically radiated youthful energy and effortless tech-savvy confidence. Chloe spoke in the latest industry buzzwords, moved with absolute certainty, and smiled with the flawless skin of someone who had never worried about a wrinkle.
Within days, Clara watched a painful but familiar pattern unfold as her colleagues eagerly gravitated toward the newcomer. During brainstorming sessions, the managers hung on Chloe's every word, nodding enthusiastically at ideas Clara had suggested years ago. Even the casual office banter shifted, leaving Clara feeling isolated as references to trends and viral videos flew right over her head. Instead of being viewed as a seasoned expert, Clara felt herself being pushed into the background, treated like an outdated piece of software. She tried to overcompensate by working late, drinking endless cups of coffee, and trying desperately to mimic the fast-paced energy around her. But the physical and mental toll of trying to outrun a colleague half her age was entirely exhausting. A bitter sense of resentment began to poison her thoughts, replacing her natural desire to mentor with a toxic urge to compete. She realized that Chloe wasn't just a new employee, she was a living, breathing reminder of the asset Clara no longer possessed. The corporate world's obsession with the next big thing was forcing a cruel changing of the guard. And for the first time in her career, Clara faced the terrifying certainty that she was actively being replaced. Driven by the mounting pressure at work, Clara decided it was time to take a drastic step. She booked an urgent appointment for an aggressive cosmetic procedure, hoping it would finally deliver the flawless results she needed. The doctor promised that the treatment would lift her skin and effortlessly erase a decade of aging from her face. She went into the clinic filled with hope, willing to endure the burning pain and discomfort for the sake of her future. But when she returned home and the numbing cream finally wore off, a terrible reality began to set in. Sitting under the harsh light of her bathroom, Clara slowly unwrapped the protective medical dressing and looked up. A sharp gasp caught in her throat, and a cold dread instantly flooded her entire body. Her skin was severely swollen, deeply bruised, and stretched into an unnaturally tight, frozen expression. The lines were technically gone, but so was the warmth, the character, and the familiarity of her own expressions. She tried to smile, but her lips moved rigidly, creating a distorted look that didn't resemble happiness at all. A heavy wave of panic crashed over her as she realized she had gone too far in her desperate quest. In her frantic attempt to avoid looking old, she had accidentally erased the unique features that made her who she was. She fell to her knees on the cold tile floor, staring at a stranger who looked back with empty, artificial eyes. The mirror had delivered the ultimate betrayal, proving that the frantic chase for youth was destroying her identity from the inside out. For 3 agonizing days, Clara stayed hidden inside her apartment, refusing to let anyone see her bruised face. As the physical swelling slowly faded, a deeper internal shift began to take place within her mind. She realized she needed to step completely outside of her own superficial world before the walls closed in on her entirely. Searching for a fresh start, she signed up to volunteer at a local community center's weekend food program. On Saturday morning, her heart raced with anxiety as she walked through the doors, wearing a simple baseball cap and absolutely no makeup. She was assigned to work alongside an elderly gentleman named Marcus, whose face was deeply carved with decades of laugh lines and wisdom. Marcus didn't care about her wardrobe, her resume, or the subtle imperfections around her eyes. He simply handed her an apron and smiled warmly. Throughout the busy afternoon, Clara sliced vegetables, packed crates, and conversed with dozens of neighborhood residents. For the first time in years, no one was judging her based on her physical appearance or comparing her to a younger standard. The people she served looked directly into her eyes, expressing profound gratitude for her time, her care, and her steady hands. She found herself laughing freely, completely forgetting to worry about whether the movement was deepening the wrinkles around her mouth. By the end of her shift, her muscles ached, but a long-forgotten sense of warmth and genuine purpose filled her chest. She walked home that evening realizing that the most meaningful parts of her had been completely invisible to the corporate world. Away from the harsh glare of office politics and mirrors, she had finally found a place where her true essence was actually seen. In the weeks that followed, Clara's weekly volunteer shifts became the anchor of her entire life. Slowly, the way she observed the world around her began to undergo a profound and beautiful transformation. Instead of looking at older women with a sense of pity or fear, she began to study them with a newfound admiration. She watched Evelyn, a woman in her late 70s who ran the community center's literacy program with absolute grace. Evelyn did not hide her silver hair. Instead, she wore it like a proud, elegant crown that framed her striking face. When Evelyn spoke, the deep lines around her mouth didn't look like flaws, they looked like the beautiful architecture of a life filled with laughter. Clara began to realize that society had sold her a toxic lie by labeling aging as a slow, tragic fading of beauty. In reality, true beauty did not disappear with youth, it simply evolved into something far more grounded, resilient, and profound. One evening, Clara sat down at her vanity table and looked at the expensive anti-aging serums she had accumulated. The jars that once represented hope now looked like foolish monuments to a battle that was never worth fighting. With a steady, deliberate hand, she swept the costly products into a large trash bin, feeling an immediate weight lift from her shoulders. She picked up a simple moisturizer, applying it gently without checking for new wrinkles or hiding from the glass. She was finally learning to look at her own face not as a failing defense system, but as a beautiful, evolving canvas. Every mark, line, and shadow told the story of her survival, her intelligence, and the incredible journey she had traveled so far. The ultimate test of Clara's newfound perspective arrived with an invitation to the firm's annual winter gala. In the past, this high-profile event was where she thrived, spending days picking the perfect gown to ensure she would outshine everyone. This year, as she stood before her closet, she felt a quiet determination take hold of her instead of her usual anxiety. She chose a classic, minimalist black dress, styled her hair naturally to allow the silver threads to show, and applied light, clean makeup. Walking into the grand ballroom, the room was a blinding sea of flashing cameras, expensive designer labels, and painfully tight, frozen faces. She spotted Chloe across the room, surrounded by a circle of executives who were hanging on her every youthful laugh. For a fleeting second, the old, familiar knot of insecurity tightened in Clara's stomach, threatening to pull her back into despair. Taking a deep, grounding breath, she reminded herself of who she was now and stepped confidently into the crowd. Later in the evening, while standing near the balcony, Clara was cornered by Julian, a superficial client known for his backhanded compliments. Julian looked her up and down, a patronizing smirk playing on his lips as he remarked, "Clara, look at you, embracing the mature look." The surrounding circle went completely silent, everyone holding their breath to see how she would react to the public insult. Instead of shrinking back or making a defensive excuse, Clara looked Julian directly in the eye and let out a genuine, relaxed laugh. "Thank you, Julian," she replied smoothly, her voice carrying a calm authority that commanded the entire space. Julian's smirk vanished instantly, and he stumbled over his words as the power dynamic completely flipped in her favor. As she walked away, Clara felt an exhilarating rush of freedom wash over her from head to toe. She hadn't just survived the confrontation, she had completely shattered the illusion that her age was a weakness to be ashamed of. The morning after the gala, Clara woke up to the soft, warm light of a brand new day filtering through her bedroom window. She walked into the bathroom, but this time there was no hesitation, no dread, and no racing heartbeat. She leaned in close to the glass and looked deeply into her own eyes, greeted by a profound sense of inner peace. The silver strands in her hair caught the sunlight, shining like threads of silver armor she had rightfully earned through years of living. The lines around her eyes no longer looked like betrayals. They looked like beautiful, permanent maps of every joy, challenge, and triumph she had survived. She smiled, and for the first time in a decade, the expression felt completely authentic, light, and beautifully unburdened. She realized that the world's obsession with youth was a narrow trap, and she had finally found the courage to break free of its walls. True beauty wasn't about freezing time or pleasing a society that only looks at the surface of things. It was about the strength of your character, the depth of your compassion, and the absolute freedom of living your truth without apology. Later that afternoon, Clara returned to the community center, ready to step into her role as a leader and a mentor. She walked with her head held high, no longer needing an invisibility cloak because she was finally visible to herself. The exhausting race against the ticking clock was officially over, and she had won the most important battle of all. She took a deep, liberating breath and stepped forward into the next chapter of her life, completely unmasked, beautifully mature, and undeniably free. And that brings us to the end of Clara's journey in the aging face. It's a tough reality to face, but as Clara discovered, true value and beauty aren't things that time can take away from you. They are things you earn through living, learning, and growing wiser every single day. Before you go, I want to hear from you down in the comments below. Which chapter of Clara's story resonated with you the most? Have you ever felt that pressure to stay young in a world that moves so fast? Let's talk about it down below. And don't forget, you can find all the vocabulary of the story down below in the description box. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep practicing your English with real-life, meaningful situations, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Keep practicing your English, and I will see you in the next story. Goodbye.